Hello, my name is Perry Kennedy, and today I will be doing a presentation on interpersonal communication. This presentation is for my HSCO counseling class at Liberty University. Let's begin. Next slide. Okay, so the first slide we're going to talk about the introduction. Positive interpersonal communication is a form of communication that takes place when the people involved talk and listen in ways that take full advantage of the presence of the personal. This may be a conversation between multiple people using the skills developed through practice and repetition. This study addresses several positive and negative aspects such as enlarging the conversation, behavior blends, potential barriers, internal noise, and external noise from a personal perspective, while addressing Christian-based counseling processes. Next slide. This next slide talks about overarching goal: to improve interpersonal communication within the marriage and family setting, so that I will be able to connect with others in a truthful and authentic way through reassuring them to rely on their own judgments and beliefs. I will make every effort to be courteous and understanding, as well as attentive and observant. Whereas always remember the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This is important in every aspect in our lives. Next slide. This next slide discusses enlarging my conversation. The enlargement of the conversation will be inclusive of summarization of the speech process from a more broad perspective to one which is more centralized and focused on the individual needs of the client, while holding a direct and truthful communication to permit all partakers an active voice. Further allowing the Word of God and His direction to guide the counseling apparatus to more healthy and positive outcomes. The next slide. I'm going to go back. This is the slide. Okay, so this next slide talks about my background. I am a 35-year-old Black American female. I was born and raised in a small town by the name of Waycross, Georgia. I grew up in a nuclear family, which included my two sisters, my mom, and my father. I have a Christianity religion. I grew up in a Baptist church where I was pretty much raised all of my life. I have a 6-year-old son, and I am currently engaged to my son's father. I have completed a bachelor's degree in psychology from Ashford University, and now I'm attending Liberty University for a master's in human service counseling with the emphasis in marriage and family therapy. I work with mental health clients and abused children. I'm the program manager at Volunteers of America, where I work with mental health adults, and I also work for a part-time job at Infinite Possibility Counseling Service, where I do parent aid services, and I work contract through the Department of Family and Children Services, sometimes working with abused children or children that have been witnesses of domestic violence and substance abuse in their families. That's a little bit about my background. Next slide. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the positives and the negatives. My personal background of being raised in a traditional nuclear family involves one father and one mother, gives me a clear perspective of the positive impacts that family environment imparts to its members. Greater mental and emotional stability brought on by a more structured environment. And this, I must say, was very structured. My mom, she played the nurturing role in the family, whereas my father, he was the breadwinner, and he also was the one that set rules and set guidelines in our family. So I would say that it was a very structured setting that I grew up in. An aspect of my background that presents itself as a negative is the situational birth of my 6-year-old son. My son was conceived out of wedlock through myself and his father. Although we are now currently engaged and we are in a long-term committed relationship, there are negative issues that I see that will prevail, such as the last name issue that will have to be addressed once we are legally married. These aspects can be confusing to a young child. My last name is different from my son's last name as well as his father. And so this does raise some concerns and some questions by my son. So, it is kind of a difficult time being able to explain this information and for a 6-year-old to wrap his mind around the fact that mom and dad and himself does not all have the same last name. Next slide. Okay, so now this next slide discusses behavior blends. So we have the D, which is active and task. We have the I, which is active and people-oriented. S, which is passive and task. And then C, which is passive and people-oriented. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about some of these characteristics that describes my personality. And one I would say is friendly. I would say friendly because I have a welcoming personality. Many people have told me that in the past, that I'm very friendly. I don't meet any strangers. Whenever someone is in need or they are require any help, that I'm always willing to offer my assistance to them. I am in a helping profession because I do consider myself to be people oriented and a very friendly and outgoing person. I would also say that I would also consider myself to be cautious. I'm very cautious about the things that I do. I'm very cautious about who I allow into my life and the things that I say to others. So I would consider myself to be a cautious person as well as patient. Very patient. I would consider myself anxious for anything, but rather wait on the Lord to guide me and direct me in the path that He would have for me. So that's a little bit about behavior plan. Next slide. This next slide we're going to talk about potential barriers. The first is flat brain syndrome. Peterson's theory addressing the impact of emotion on communication process. It explains how our emotion, thinking, and relating abilities work and how what goes on inside us come out in the way that we communicate. The next is self-conscious listening. This type of listening involves thought processes, focusing on self over the speaker. Some individuals focus too much attention on themselves by thinking, am I doing well or am I doing badly? The next is biased listening. Listening interpreted through a prism based on personal opinion. When we form an opinion about the level and value of what will be said. The next slide. Okay, this next slide we're going to talk about internal noise pollution. Internal noise involves several different elements that affect the ability to listen in a comprehensive manner. The mind wandering based on personal issues such as stress, work overload, grief, and even phobias can present an internal noise, complicating one's ability to carry on a productive conversation. Solutions include taking control over past experience, treating information in a positive manner, and implementing patience within the listening process. We're going to move on to the next slide, which discusses external noise pollution. External noise involves environmental interruptions to conversation, such as loud noise, rapid speaker, multitask, and exterior activities that consume the listener's attention. Solutions may involve seeking clarification, finding a quieter place for discourse, and addressing one issue at a time. Next slide. This next slide, we're going to go over the action plan. Seeking respectful communication processes, listening with intent and patience, directing focus outwardly away from self, avoiding personal bias and unsupported opinions, implementing effective and positive praise, implementing Peterson's talker listening card, meta-communicate processes, addressing faith-based values and attitudes, seeking better understanding. The next slide. This next slide discusses the action plan being continued. Recognizing non-productive behavior patterns, maintaining an open mind that respects the opinion of others, address conflict management in ways that promote a peaceful and calm environment, recognizing the value of self-disclosure, implementing the 3 aspects of empathetic listening process. Empathetic listening requires 3 skill sets: focusing, encouraging, and reflecting. Implement listening as a whole found in the mindful approach. Mindful listening requires you to see, hear, and feel with your whole being. The next slide. This concludes my presentation. This is the list of the references, the sources where I got the information throughout my PowerPoint presentation. I hope that this information was very informative, and thanks for listening.